From unranked to top 10, there's been at least one team every season in the past 2011 and the COVID year of 2020 that a team has started the season unranked but finished the year in the final AP top 10. Which unranked teams will finish in the top 10 this year? Last year, 3 teams respectively did so: Michigan, Baylor, and Michigan State. This video is being recorded after 6 weeks of games being played. We will examine each conference to see which teams, if any, have a chance to go from unranked in the preseason to the top 10. We do have the advantage of looking at the teams after 6 weeks. The conferences that we think won't have a team going from unranked to the top 10 are the American Conference, Conference USA, the Independents, Mid-American, and Mountain West. In the ACC, there's 2 teams that have the potential of going from unranked to the top 10 at this time. They are the Syracuse Orange and the North Carolina State Wolfpack. Syracuse is a huge dark horse this year and will continue to be so in the quest to make the top 10 at the end of the year. Their current remaining schedule is North Carolina State, Clemson, Notre Dame, Pittsburgh, Florida State, Wake Forest, and Boston College. It's highly unlikely that they lose less than 2 games in that stretch, not even including their bowl game, which is going to be super tough to do. They'll probably end the year in the top 25, but not the top 10. North Carolina State Wolfpack is a little bit different of a story. However, they still do have a tough schedule. A couple weeks ago, they lost to Clemson by 10 points. They barely squeaked out a win against Florida State. Again, as we just mentioned, they play Syracuse next, so that should kind of determine on what happens with North Carolina State going forward. If they lose, doesn't look good with 2 losses. If they win, obviously that's a good feather to put in their cap. From there, they play Virginia Tech, Wake Forest, Boston College, Louisville, and North Carolina. There's also an issue where their quarterback is currently injured, and there's no timetable on his return. Their quarterback is one of the best returning quarterbacks this year in the ACC, so that determines if they're going to make the top 10 or not. If he doesn't return, probably not. If he does, I guess it kind of depends on how good he comes back, and then they'll see from there. To the Big 12 Conference, there are 2 potential teams that could go from unranked to the top 10. They are currently the TCU Horned Frogs and the Texas Longhorns. We'll start with Texas first, as they have 2 losses. They played well against Alabama. Their quarterback, Quinn Ewers, got injured. Because of Ewers' injury, they eventually lost to Texas Tech. However, with Ewers back last week against Oklahoma, they played fantastic, 49-0. Their upcoming schedule is a little dicey, to say the least. They play Iowa State next. Should be an okay game for them to win. Oklahoma State from there. Kansas State after that. TCU, Kansas, and Baylor. So their back end of the schedule is pretty packed. However, if Ewers doesn't get injured, you could almost assume they're going to be 6-0 at this point of the time, and they're probably 1, 2, or 3 ranked right now in the nation if Ewers wasn't injured. So if they are able to win out, if they're able to win their bowl game, Texas does have a good chance to make it in the top 10. TCU has the advantage of being undefeated currently at 5-0 with huge wins over Oklahoma and last week against Kansas. Upcoming schedule is going to be a little dicey compared to Texas as well, with Oklahoma State, Kansas State, West Virginia should be an easy one, Texas Tech, shaky, Texas, Baylor, and Iowa State. Again, if they have 2 losses coming out of that whole thing, if they win their bowl game, they have a really good chance to get in the top 10. They've been playing really well this whole year. Their offense is on par. It's just really seeing, how good Oklahoma State is compared to them. Kansas State is kind of shaky this year. They've been playing really well, so we'll see what happens there. Again, with Texas, they seem to be the team to beat if Ewers is healthy for the rest of the year. So we'll kind of see how that shakes out in the Big 12. Next up is the Big 10, which is all sorts of messy. In the Eastern Conference, we have Penn State with a really good chance to make it into the top 10 at the end of the year. Not too sure why they were unranked to begin with in the year. They should have been ranked with a pretty good senior quarterback coming in, pretty good experienced team. They should have been ranked. If they were, we wouldn't have this conversation right now. But going into the rest of the year, Penn State has a really good chance to make in the top 10. They do have a really hard 3-game stretch to begin with this week with Michigan, Minnesota, and Ohio State. If they're able to win 2 of those 3 games, maybe even only one of those games, and then win out the rest of the year, win their bowl game, they have a really good chance to make in the top 10 at the end of the year. But these next 3 games will really determine where they are before the bowl game happens. And then on the west side of things, it could be a combination of multiple different teams. It could be Illinois, Purdue, or Minnesota. The good thing about each of those 3 teams is the fact that the Big Ten West is very non-competitive this year compared to other teams. Wisconsin's really bad. Iowa's offense is really bad. So it's really whoever wins the Big Ten West, or maybe in second place, has a chance to make the top 10. Purdue has a really great quarterback. Illinois' defense has been on par this year. Their coach is obviously Brett Bielema, who used to coach for Wisconsin, so a lot of experience there and how to win and win big. And then with Minnesota, you have, if the running back, Mohem Ibrahim, isn't injured, as he was against Purdue, if he is healthy for the rest of the year, they're a whole different team than they are without him. And their defense has been really good this year as well. So it's really, if you win the Big Ten West, what does your record look like? And then from there, you're probably going to play Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. So if you can come out of the West with 1 or 2 losses, play competitive in the Big Ten championship game, win your bowl game, great chance to make the top 10. Minnesota actually made the top 10 in 2019 when they went from unranked to top 10. They lost, I think it was 2 games that year, and then they beat Auburn in their bowl game to secure that top 10 spot. They actually were 10th in 2019. Heading out west into the Pac-12, a couple weeks ago, we would have said there had been a handful of teams that looked like competitors to make the top 10 at the end of the year. However, at this point in time, it looks like UCLA is really the only team that has that chance. And good for them. They're finally getting competitive. They have a great quarterback. I think he's been there for 4 or 5 years. And with Chip Kelly there, he's finally seen the success that he's seen elsewhere. So UCLA looks really good. Their offense looks really good. The Pac-12 is actually probably better than they have been in other years. So that's probably one hindrance they have against them. Otherwise, from a schedule standpoint, they play Oregon next in a couple weeks, Stanford, Arizona State, Arizona, USC, and then California. Obviously, Oregon and USC are going to be the toughest of those remaining teams. So it looks like they could potentially head with 2 losses or less going to the end of the year. They have a bowl game. Pretty good chance to make the top 10 there. Going back over to the SEC, we look at one team potentially going into top 10, and that is Tennessee. They have been playing phenomenal football the last few weeks, and they play Alabama next this week, along with Georgia towards the early November. The rest of their schedule pretty easy. If they're able to beat one of those teams, either Alabama or Georgia, it sets them up well for the end of the year to be ranked high to get in a good bowl. And then from there, if they win that great bowl, they should be able to get in the top 10. Tennessee looks like one of the better teams on the list that have been mentioned so far, along with UCLA and then with Texas. Because they have 2 losses, it's kind of sketchy. But Tennessee is definitely one of the better teams. Their quarterback is great this year. Dark horse Heisman. Better than expected. They should have been ranked as well, along with Penn State. Texas probably should have been ranked as well. For some reason, these teams weren't ranked, and other teams were ranked when they shouldn't have been, such as like Pittsburgh. So Tennessee is definitely a great team to look out for. Last but not least, we look at the Sun Belt Conference. You guys are probably like, what is the Sun Belt Conference? Who are these teams? Who the hell could make it from unranked to the top 10 in the Sun Belt Conference? Well, there's 2 teams, actually. It's Coastal Carolina and the James Madison Dukes. Coastal Carolina is not that much a surprise. 2 years ago, they were undefeated going into their bowl game. They lost. this year they're playing pretty well again. They have 3 games that are going to be iffy towards the end of the year. App State at the beginning of November, and then Virginia and James Madison at the end of the year. Probably won't make the top 10. Just good underdog story, dark horse to root for. Same with James Madison. One of the giants of the FCS, along with North Dakota State Bison. They moved up this year into the FBS, and they're currently dominating. Granted, they haven't played anyone really that good yet, but they do play Louisville towards the end of the year in a couple games, and then they also play Coastal Carolina. Currently, right now, they're ranked 25, playing great defense, playing great offense, a great team, just like they were in the FCS. And it's really cool to see that it's translating over to the FBS. And who knows, they might be one of those dark horse Boise State type of teams where, they get a really good bowl game, they go undefeated, maybe they win the bowl game. If not, who knows? But it's a really good story to cheer for them to get in the top 10 for the end of the year. Kind of to recap, like I mentioned before, Tennessee's a really good team to go from unranked to top 10. Probably one of the teams from the Big Ten, and then also UCLA. Texas is Texas. If they can win out, they have a really great chance from there as well. Obviously, you mentioned a handful of other teams that have a chance, but probably not the greatest chance. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But we'll probably talk about this subject again towards the end of the year when the final poll comes out and we see what exactly happens. And then obviously talk about it on a yearly basis as well. But going forward, we talk about it before the year to get more information. And obviously, we're kind of cheating with seeing 5 or 6 games worth of information to look at per se. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, feel free to like, subscribe, and comment. Feel free to comment about this video or maybe other topics that you'd appreciate that we cover. And again, we appreciate you as a viewer and that you watched. We'll see you next time.